Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. It's April 26th at this point, and this is lesson 14 of the 2018 semester. Like, we got a first half of the year semester, so we are, heading towards the culmination point. And topic for level 1 today is going to be all about death as a focuser, like the way that a lens focuses light from a blurry, indistinct shape into a more laser-like beam. And also, we're going to talk first about abstract aspects of death and then more anthropomorphic aspects of death. And then in level 2, I'm going to speak about cancer, the disease, as it relates to the material that I shared last week, which is galactic history, the idea of the origin of the difficulties that we are finding ourselves in. Why do we have, we have genetic invaders? And I shared that sad story, like good news, bad news, last week. And what we can do in response to those genetic invaders. Well, some of those genetic invaders developed a disease, made a disease develop in order for massive energy harvesting, and that is known as cancer. So that's going to be in level 2, the advanced stuff. So beginning in level 1 over here, first I'll start off with this little sculpture. So everyone who's been following this series and you guys are all experts and you all know exactly what I'm talking about here. And I'll hold it super close and extreme close up so you can see. So this is actually 2 tori. It's a torus at 90-degree angles. We have 2 toruses or tori, and this is the time field, and it's a little slice of the time field. And I did a whole presentation about how I'm showing you one sculpture because this is it's like a little snippet of what's going on, that this is connected to many, many, many other time field. These are like building blocks that build reality, and that each one of these vortices here can represent a life, and that we have many, many different lives, forms of existence that fit together and interact in like a big, giant, complex, we call it moving puzzle pieces, or matrix, even though not like the movie The Matrix, not like just a limiting place, but like a tessellation, a tiling, a crystalline structure of all of these perfectly arranged lives. And let me also drink water. One of the things that I spoke about last week in terms of the genetic invasion on this planet is that we were not intended to ever have to experience death. That we were intended to be able to take that central pathway. So that you could think of this as pathways. So as I'm showing you the sculpture, remember it in your mind. This is what it looks like when it's on its side, and I'm going to do cutaway cross sections this way. But I'm also going to show you what it looks like here. If I hold this in front of me, you can kind of see from this angle, from this direction. We're looking kind of like from the bottom up or from the top down. So let me go into the whiteboard now and begin this explanation. This is death, the abstraction, because I recognize that we are speaking a lot. There's a lot of fear surrounding death, the anthropomorphic aspect. Many people think like, oh no, like I'm going to die. People I love are going to die. It means the end of consciousness. It means the end of being. And I see death as something different. And let me just get a good color here. All right. So here's that cross section. Trying to draw a neat circle of that yellow sculpture. And remember, we have 2, so that what I'm drawing right now, that is 1 torus. And the central apple core, this, part that I'm scribbling on right now, that is where the timelines exist. So we basically have areas of life where energy is supposed to exist and where consciousness is supposed to flow. Consciousness is supposed to flow just in the exact same way. Let me switch colors here. Like, let's say this is blood flowing through your body, right? And these are these little dots. These are little red blood cells that are flowing along that pathway in your body, in each one of our bodies. And they're supposed to go from the heart over here. Here's a big fat heart, out to the organs over here, and then travel back to the heart and the lungs and re-up and everything like that. So the journey of red blood cells around the circulatory system of the embodied biological human is analogous to the journey of consciousness through the time field circulating around this toroidal sculpture shape. And it's coming from this central place here, that convergence point, that is the source, the 0th dimension, aka singularity. However, singularity, I'm not speaking of in terms of the transhumanist singularity, which is defined as the melding of human and machine. And what I'm speaking about it more in terms of, I'm going to draw this little like tablecloth over here. I did this in a previous presentation. We're stretching the infinitely stretchy fabric of the cosmos by putting an infinitely heavy object on top of it, or pressing down with giant God fingers in this direction. And this point down here just keeps going and going and going infinitely in that direction. That's the singularity. It is the place where we have stretched the fabric of time, space, and consciousness so much that the rules of reality break down. And that means that the most unlikely things can happen at that little spot over there. That is the tour of the torus, the donut hole, the place where everything converges together. And so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to focus on this portion of that sculpture, and I'm going to make a simplified drawing, but you also understand that that sculpture has complementary torus that goes, oops, that's not exactly what I wanted to draw. There's kind of a vortex that goes this way like this. This is that little yellow sculpture I was just showing you guys. And another vortex that goes kind of like that, okay? But I'm focusing on just this as a simplification down here. So let me clear it all out and now draw a big fat one so you can see what I'm talking about. So our intended format, like by the great conductor, the great composer, was that we would come from this big blue dot, that's the singularity, the central convergence point. Oh, there's a question. Let me not get too far ahead and ask the answer. So it's Joelle. She asks, so are black holes just a part of a huge invisible space torus? What an awesome question. Thank you. Let me talk about stars and their life cycle and what black holes are. So if this is a star, and wait, how are stars? First of all, stars are just like us. And spoiler alert, we will all become stars. That's what this journey is all about. So stars become stars by first, imagine these are all like a bunch of little tiny dots that are gas and dust and floating around in space. It's a nebula. It's the potential for life. It's like raw dough, but it's not a cookie yet. All of that nebulous dust gets together and magically, meaning without explanation, but kind of in response to galactic superwaves, which are huge, enormous waves of consciousness. Like imagine if this is the galaxy, a huge, big, long wave that goes from one side of the galaxy to the other side of the galaxy. That's how big that music is. The giant galactic superwaves it's kind of like cymatics. They move through the medium of interstellar space, organizing materials as they move. And it's very much like music, that we've got musical waves that are moving along, just like cymatics, organizing little tiny pieces of dust. So the dust over here gets jiggled together and compressed together and eventually coalesces and becomes a star. And it's a star that it has a life metabolism. Like in level 2, we're going to talk about what makes something alive as opposed to a non-corporeal, semi-alive being. Stars are alive. They have a metabolism. They need to eat and they need to expend energy and they need to have energy come back into them. And in this case is the energy of consciousness. So nebula coalesces into a star, and then during the star's lifespan, it emits, and science describes those emissions as being the end result of kind of like just a dumb chemical process. Like it's just doing stuff and just sending out photons. It's just willy-nilly. It's because, science is not able to perceive a lot of what is going on. It hasn't built an apparatus that can perceive consciousness, so it doesn't understand what's really happening. But there's a portal. I'm drawing let me get a better color. Let me get a singularity color. Let's say there's a singularity inside of that star, and that is actually connected to this infinity point. There's a point, a doorway to infinity inside of the star. And that star is a portal that has consciousness that comes from another place through the portal and then out into space in the form of light. And for a certain amount of time of that star's life, it emits. Light comes out of it and goes all outward into the world. And what's supposed to happen in order to maintain its metabolic processes is that we eat and receive that light, and then we send it back to the star in the form of consciousness. So if the star sends out a bunch of photons that coalesce into an apple and you eat the apple, you're supposed to send back the direct live stream experience of eating that apple to the sun. And that is in a way supporting your parent, like the child supporting the existence of the parent. And the stars have a lifespan. They emit for, could be millions of years, it could be billions of years. There are some stars that have such a long lifespan, their time scale is so vast that they have not died yet. Like they started at the very beginning of this timeline of the universe. Let me drink water. And they have not yet died. And we're about 13 billion years into this story, according to science. And they will die at a certain point, but none of the stars of that magnitude have died. But smaller stars have died. And then what happens is all of the stuff that they've been sending out over their life, now it's like a rubber band. It all starts to flow back. And that is what a black hole is. That all of that outward energy then turns around and reverses and becomes inward energy. And that's what I was drawing with that, super stretchy fabric of the cosmos. Here now it's a blue tablecloth. And that sun, when it starts to draw in a star, I should say rather, when it starts to draw in all of that energy that it once emitted, it becomes an endless stretching. I'm trying to make it look like that's fabric stretching inward. It goes inward towards that singularity that was once emitting outward. It's a balance. That's what love is. When I say love is a tone that is created by balance. Balance of, we could call it metabolism of consciousness, sending out and receiving. So the stars send out and the stars receive. And this is like on a giant time scale. So here's the answer to your question. I know this is a big, long Megillah for the answer to your question. So science describes this particular universe, think of it as like one timeline or one version of reality. At a certain point, all of the possible stars that can ever be born out of the little nebula, like here's dust and gas, this is raw material, all of the raw dough has been baked into cookies. All of the stars that could ever be made are made in the cosmos, in this universe. And they all live, they have their metabolism, they do their thing, they emit their photons, and then they get to the end of their lifespan. At the end of their lifespan, there's no more gas in the car to go. There's no more emission to make. They send out. They can't send out anymore. So then they draw in, and then what we end up having is a whole entire universe that is made only out of, now I'm drawing like black holes. It's kind of like Swiss cheese. If you could imagine a big giant world, because stars emit light and heat and energy and the vitality for consciousness and continued life. And at the end, like basically at the end of this story of this particular universe, in another 13 billion years or so, all the stars that could ever be born have been born and they all die. That's like whatever. It's a little bit sad. They all die. And it's the end of the story. And they all turn into black holes or portals of consciousness through which energy can go elsewhere. And I'm drawing these blue arrows now. Yeah, that's energy and consciousness and light and heat all going elsewhere. It's like Elvis has left the building. The energy has left this level of the cosmos. And what happens is all of the energy goes elsewhere, all of the consciousness goes elsewhere, and this entire universe becomes an incredibly cold, dead space that is a Bose-Einstein condensate. And that's what I spoke about on many other occasions, and written it out and everything for you. Bose-Einstein condensate is a form of matter that is even more dense than our current physical level of matter. I can touch my face. This is matter. It's not a Bose-Einstein condensate, because we have heat. When you take little molecules and you bring them down to an almost zero level of heat or motion, like just a fraction of a degree above Kelvin, what happens is all of the little molecules, all the little atoms, they don't move around anymore and they start to kind of smear on top of each other. And instead of many, many individual atoms, they start to combine together and become one super atom or one overarching atom. And it's unity consciousness. And that little unity consciousness I just drew right there is absolutely the same unity consciousness as this one that I'm pointing to here, that is the presence of everything. We have the singularity that is, I'm holding up the flying rainbow lasagna, that is, total energy, we could say pointing towards the ceiling or pointing towards the sky. Energy, movement, heat, consciousness, continued vitality and life. And then we have at the other bottom end, entropy, loss of energy, non-awareness, no heat, no movement. So my answer to this is that black holes are related to this black hole over here that I just drew is related to the singularity in the way that they are like equal opposites. And that's also part of this love or balance of the cosmos. Oh, okay. I know I'm making squinty, funny faces. All right, wonderful. It's another really good question I'm happy to answer. Yeah. So, okay. All right, wait. And that, Joelle, let me also say this in the chat because I didn't think when it records that everyone can see what the chat says afterwards. So Joelle was also saying, spoiler alert, we're all star babies. And I really like that a lot. That is truthful. And if you guys ever saw that movie 2001, A Space Odyssey, I think that's the message of that movie, that we are star babies and that we are going through this transformative process. And what I'm doing with this lesson is we're redefining death. We're making it less in anthropomorphic experience where we think, oh no, grandma died. Like, we don't want granny to die. Stay alive, granny. And instead understanding that when a person dies, we're talking about energy entering into this membrane area here that I'm highlighting with my blue pen. That is what the experience of death is. That it is an end to the journey of life. And if I say the journey of life, I mean all of these red timelines. All of these are simplifications because they don't actually go up and down like lollipops. They actually go around like a spiral. And I say this every time I draw this because I want, if a person ever only accesses this video, I don't want a person to misinterpret it. And this is a cross section, what I'm pointing at here. And so these timelines come in from the periphery and go towards the center. And each one of them has a termination point. That's why I say it looks like a lollipop, these dots over here. That dot or termination point is the end result of all of the calculations that a person is doing in their life in terms of combinations of variables. And the variables are your thoughts and your feelings and your emotions and what your body movements are and where you're physically located. It's all of the possibilities of your life. What I'm drawing with this big giant thing that I'm scribbling over is a field of possibilities. And it's also a field of probabilities. So wait, and I'm going to get to that question about dark matter too, don't worry. The probabilities have to do, now I'm drawing it from the top down. So now it looks kind of like an old-fashioned analog record, right? A record that, you might have like Led Zeppelin playing on your record player, and this is a groove. And the old-fashioned record has a song that goes in one big long groove, or many songs on a record that goes all the way and then spirals inwards towards that. And that is what our journey has been like since the degradation of the human genome. Because what we are intended to do is bypass all the rigmarole, not have to listen to every bad song on the album. Just go to your favorite song. And your favorite song is this, what I'm drawing here in the cross section, that central core timeline. And in the bullseye, I'm going to use the magic of perspective. Now it looks like, oh, look, I'm an arrow pointing up the center of this bullseye. But you guys are using your interpretation system, so you understand that is, we're going up the center of the vortex. That you shouldn't, let me draw red dots, you shouldn't have to experience all of these red dots around the edge. Oh God, no. I'm so sorry. I don't know why, first of all, the phone is coming through the computer and I don't know how to disable it. And my phone is in a completely different room right now. So we're just having technological gremlins trying to interrupt me. Don't pay no attention to the gremlins, everyone. Let's just continue. These red dots going around the periphery, those are analogous to these guys that I have over here. So we just have two views of the same thing, right? And those red dots are like the termination points or final snapshots or final experiences of your life. And okay. And I'm going to get to those questions. And in terms of probability, so possibility means anything that can possibly happen here. And when I draw that time vortex and when I hold up this yellow sculpture, there's the areas that are in the cones, in the vortexes, and the areas that are not in the vortexes. And we basically have energy and information that is moving at different divergent rates. Some of these energies are moving up and down in a perfect line like that, and some of them are moving around and around in a circular or spiral structure. So these are different directions of energy. And yeah, that's good. I'll get to that. That's a very good insight, Joelle. Possibility means anything that can possibly happen in your life. Anything. Including, you woke up one morning with two heads, you woke up one morning and pirates kidnapped you, you woke up one morning and a crocodile, whatever, ate your breakfast instead of you. Though any weird, outlandish thing is a possibility. But then probability means what is the mathematical likelihood of it? And if we looked at this area over here, we'd say, oh, look, there's a big mathematical likelihood, a large area, a big square footage where an arrow could land that's all the way out here. That's easy. It's easy to get a low score in archery. You hit the periphery, right? But then there's fewer and fewer possibilities as we spiral towards the center. And then there's only one possibility of a timeline that goes up here. I'll draw it like this over here, up, spirals up that central core timeline here. There's only one possibility that is in that perfect alignment and that exits the wormhole, that little tiny opening that I'm highlighting right there. I made a big giant wormhole in this drawing because I'm exaggerating everything, but we all have to understand it is the tiniest, tiniest, tiniest opening that it is possible to make. And I use this analogy all the time, and I've got my piano set up for this purpose. The idea that we were intended to be able to, see and understand the musical score of life, and not to have to play every single possible note on the scale. Like if someone is saying to you, okay, everybody, okay, band, like the conductor's like, tap, 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 get ready, band, give me a C, give me a C. And you're not supposed to have to be like, well, maybe it's this one. No, maybe it's this one. No, maybe it's this one. No, maybe this one. No, this one. No, that one. No, that not. No. We finally found the right note. And oh, look, Cheeky Dog Boss. I'll go back to my face so you can see Cheeky Dog Boss. Yeah, she's like getting all riled up because I'm playing the wrong note. There's Cheeky Dog Boss here. I know you guys love her, and I tell her that she's famous on the internet all the time. Aw, yeah, she's a really good supervisor, and she wanted to be here for the video today. Likelihood. Like we are not supposed to have to go through all of these unlikely possibilities and explore every single possible combination before we get to the right note. That is what we actually want to be experiencing. That is due to the genetic degradation that is intentional by the malevolent beings that I spoke about last week in class. Those malevolent occupiers of the interstices, the turds who refuse to flush, the ones that transformed us from beings who never had to die. This is called the invention of death, that we were originally designed to be able to navigate and circulate that time field like experts. Like imagine like the best skier or the best surfer or the best, inline skater that can go right down a little tiny tunnel. That's what we're supposed to be like. We're not supposed to have to be like exploring every single possible wrong note on the scale or on the musical instrument. Your body is your instrument before you finally get a chance to hit the right note and do what you really want to do. So, okay, before I move ahead, let me go to these wonderful questions because they're not interruptive at all and they're really great. So this is, I don't know who this is from, but the question says, sorry if I'm interrupting. If you've already answered it, haven't already answered it, what do you think is the nature of the dark energy that drives cosmic acceleration? So it's difficult for me to speak to this, answer this question effectively because I feel that science in developing the concept of dark energy is having to make puzzle pieces. It's trying to logic and reason its way across a convoluted obstacle course instead of actually perceiving that science is like I've used this example in my studio before. If you're not able to see, and my studio floor has like a coffee cup and a sweater and all these different obstacles strewn about, it's very difficult to navigate the obstacle field if you can't actually see. If you try to use logic and reason to get across this landscape here, it can be almost impossible because some mornings I leave my coffee cup over there. Some mornings I leave it over there. It's not always cold. I don't always have the sweater over there. It's not always over there. And so to try to be like, okay, we are going to use our reason and our logic. 25% of the time the coffee cup is over here. Therefore, there's this much likelihood that it'll be here. Therefore, this must be here. Or any of the things that you understand what I'm talking about. It's not an effective approach. What is effective in my understanding is having perception. That's really like opening your eyes and being able to actually see, oh, here's the floor, here's the coffee cup, here's the sweater, here's the stuff to avoid, here's where you're supposed to go. So science is not yet able to really use its eyes to navigate this landscape. It's using its reason, which is like a secondary navigational functioning tool, because science is not recognizing the existence of consciousness. That I always use that phrase, the fabric of time, space, and consciousness. I add in that ingredient. That's like the vanilla extract. I add in a dash of consciousness. Science doesn't want to acknowledge consciousness at all as part of this recipe of what is happening. So science has described, oh, well, we know we've got this, like we've got this much energy here, we've got this much energy here, and something is happening. So the only way we can imagine something is happening about, we got to make up something called dark matter. So I am not necessarily agreeing with science's description or trying to fit the square peg into the round hole and say like there's got to be some dark matter out there. So what I see is consciousness flowing through time, consciousness flowing around these basic patterns, and I did, some extensive classes all about the pattern. Like if you're tuning in, this is lesson 14. We've already done that, but you can scroll back and you can find that lesson. There are certain patterns like figure skater that this goes through, and I see consciousness is following those patterns in the same way that red blood cells, flow through the veins and capillaries and arteries of our body. And that when we have good health, we have those red blood cells flowing in the right places where they're supposed to be. They're from the heart to the foot, then back to the heart, and the lungs makes everything get, filled with oxygen. And if we don't have that, like if you have red blood cells that are flowing outside of the boundaries of blood vessels, we consider that to be a very big problem. That would be like blood going in the wrong place, like bleeding. You're bleeding. That's basically bad. And also if there's a blockage, if there is no blood going where it's supposed to be going, especially to vital organs like your brain or whatever, we also consider that to be a major problem. So when there is not blood flowing to where it is supposed to go in the time field, that's a major problem. Because as I described in that other detailed recording, you're not just alone. These are, first of all, these are all you. It's all you. It's all self-portrait. That's the big takeaway. It's all you. The amazing thing, like when you really start to think in this way, that science is too, pardon my French, they're too chicken shit to think in this way. They can't recognize how interconnected consciousness is because it starts to make the game too hard. There are a lot of variables. There's however many billions of people, humans on this planet. How many dolphins are there? How many microbes are there? How many little bits, specks of, vibrating quartz are there? It's all consciousness. It becomes such a complex array that science is like, well, how can we even look at what's going on in this array? Because the present level of science, what it does is it chops things into bits and simplifies them, and then it says, I can digest this little thing, like I'm going to simplify it. So you got a butterfly. Science is not like, let's understand the way, the totality, like holistic approach of what a butterfly is. It's like, let's kill that butterfly, let's chop it into pieces, let's look at its different organs and see how it works. It's not looking at the whole. So this is I implore you to please look at the whole, because we are all part of the whole. Like I'm a photon moving through space and time and consciousness. So are all of you guys, and we're all connected. In fact, part of what my work, my visual work, like this painting that you see over my shoulder, part of the meat and potatoes of that visual work is this concept of all of us being related. And same thing with that one. I know it's in the distance, too blurry for you to see, but check it out on my website. My website is flyingrainbowlasagna.com, and that piece is called Ascension 2012. And I don't mean, when I say ascension, I don't mean Calgon take me away, like UFOs are going to pick you up and send you somewhere else. I mean, it is a transformation and a metamorphosis from one state to another state, just like caterpillar into butterfly. And that piece shows all these different figures that are all connected in this time field. And that's what this concept is, that the blood flow through this larger time body has to do with consciousness flowing. And consciousness flows from it through dogs, through humans, through the microbes in my tummy and the yeasts that are on my skin, to the yeasts that are in the atmosphere that might fly over to some of the yeasts that I fly in Rainbow Lasagna in my studio might fly through the atmosphere and end up in your coffee cup tomorrow morning. I mean, we're incredibly interconnected is what I'm trying to say. I know Christine lives not that far from me, so really, that might really be happening. And also it's non-local. I promise I won't send flying rainbow lasagna into your coffee cup tomorrow morning unless you want it. It's non-local. It's through time. It's across time. The deep antiquity. Let me drink water. We're connected to everyone in deep antiquity, and we're connected to everyone who ever will be our descendants or cosmic reverberations into the future. We're musicians playing this music now, and those sound waves that we're emitting now, they don't stop. That's big, because everyone thinks like, many people are programmed to think like, oh, your life doesn't matter. Your thoughts don't matter. Right? You're just a stupid human circulating around through the planet and like a ping pong ball, just kind of bouncing from event to event, and whatever happens, it doesn't really matter. But the truth is, it actually matters profoundly. Actually, what you do and what you think and what you say and what you feel matters profoundly. And those are the things that you can use, the tools to actually steer your car like down the road of time. We're running down this road of time. And also, I'm going to get to this question. There's a question about higher faculties. When you have your higher faculties activated, you can actually see where you're freaking going, because you're not supposed to fly blind. You're not supposed to be like, oh, look, I'm crashing into the guardrail. Oh, look, I'm like driving by feel. You're not supposed to drive by feel. And you're not supposed to have to get to that periphery. Like if you have, you know, like a bowling alley, and you have the gutters in the bowling alley. You're not supposed to have to start to get to the edge, or some of these roads have that bubbly pavement at the edge. Like when you start to go off the road, it makes your car vibrate. So that's kind of like waking people up if they're asleep at the wheel. You're not supposed to have to feel those feelings. And that's what death is. And there's this also concomitant fear right before death. If I go back to, and I'm getting to your questions in chat, I promise. I keep on saying that. I'm very trustworthy, I promise. Go back to that whiteboard. Hold on a minute. When you start to get close, let me choose a totally different color. When you start to get close to like this area that I'm highlighting in green, right before the membrane of death, a lot of the times people feel a profound fear, like a foreboding and anxiety, like dun, dun, something bad is gonna happen. Yeah, something bad is gonna happen. You're about to hit the membrane of death. And that fear is supposed to be like a warning, like that bumpy pavement on the side of the road that says, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. You're about to drive off the road into the brick wall of death. And unfortunately, because I'm telling y'all, like we are in a distorted time field. If I'm circulating the time field here, it's unhealthy because of those dark magicians that have hijacked the natural flow of consciousness around this meta entity. That fear has also become more prevalent. And now fear can exist down here. That's a perfectly safe place to be. You might be having a wonderful, fun time walking on that timeline, and all of a sudden you feel fear and anxiety, dun, dun, and that's totally out of place. That is fear out of place, because the only reason fear was invented is supposed to be like a cosmic symptom. Get out of here because you're about to die. And unfortunately, our navigation systems have been so perverted and, you know, distorted that now fear is just an all the time prevalent thing. You can feel fear when you are in a perfectly fine, safe place, and then it's not effective to be able to say, oh, when I feel this thing, then I should change my life because I'm feeling this thing. Wait. So let me go to, thank you very much for understanding and loving little cheeky. Back to these questions. And I know I make funny faces when I try to read from here. So Joelle says, so if you have your higher faculties intact, meaning being able to see through time, you can see ahead if you are out of alignment and going towards the membrane. That is exactly right. So let's say I was a bad alien. Say I'm like, I want to F with all of you. I want to screw with all of you. And you had your higher faculties intact. You know what I would do? I would blind you. I would be like, oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take like spray paint and I'm going to spray it on the camera in front of your head so that you can't see where you're going. And now your lens is all covered with muck and you don't know what's going to happen. And first I'm going to blind you and then I'm going to punch you in the face because now you can't see what's going to happen. That is what happened on this planet. That is the story of galactic history. That is what I spoke about last week. It's a very sad story, and it's something that is emotionally perturbing and, you know, not that nice to have to hear, but there's always solutions. I always bring up solutions when I talk about that. Flying rainbow lasagna. So we're becoming more empowered by understanding our cosmic history. And Joelle also has another really good comment. She says, so ghosts are membrane snapshots. That is exactly right. They are consciousness residues. These supernatural, paranormal ghosts or presences or whatever, they are residues of consciousness. And what happens when you go to the membrane of death, wait, let me go back to over here. When you go, let's say the intended format for how life is supposed to work. If you hit this membrane of death over here, where I'm making this big green dot, what's supposed to happen is you're supposed to instantaneously dissolve. That means go to entropy right away. That means stop moving through time right away. So in your body, if you have blood where it's not supposed to be, we call that a bleeding, and it might be like a big bruise, like the blood vessels have burst and then blood is outside of the levels of the blood vessels where it's not supposed to be. Blood or consciousness is not actually supposed to be here in the membrane of death. Not supposed to be, life force is not supposed to be there. Movement is not supposed to be there. It's supposed to be a cold, dead place of entropy. Like you played the wrong notes in the musical time field. You did not successfully make it up here to, you know, the big giant blue dot that I'm highlighting in green. You are supposed to stop and no longer move and continue your consciousness. And then, of course, circulate back around and, you know, try it until you do it right. But, you know, theoretically, you're supposed to now be able to have higher faculties so you read the cosmic score of so you don't have to try over and over and over again. You can get to your destination. So this dark magic, this satanic technology, and when I say satanic, I'm talking about a space race. I'm not talking about anything biblical. Like I'm not, even though, I have a relationship with Christ consciousness, but I'm not affiliated with the church, and I'm not a biblical literalist, and no offense to anyone who is. But I'm not talking about anything that's from the Bible. I'm talking about, just like you could say like a whale or a dolphin, like those are type of beings that live in the ocean. There's a type of being that is called a satanic being, and it can't live the way that you and I live. We have beautiful biological containers, and we eat breakfast. Like I had some good granola and I had some good eggs today and some wonderful tomato soup, and that is what makes my body go. And these other beings, they don't live by eating in that way or by being part of the operating system that is love, OS love. They don't run OS love. They have like battery packs. They don't have to eat. They don't have to poop. They have to get battery packs to stay alive. That will be part of lesson 2, semi-alive, non-corporeal beings and how they feed off of the living. It's dark stuff. But anyway, these satanic dark technology using space races, well, I'll get to the messages down there. What they do is they, siphon off energy from the living area of the time field and transport it into the membrane of death. And then they use it to maintain their consciousness there when they're supposed to be becoming less and less and less conscious. They're supposed to move towards entropy. They're not supposed to be alive. They're not supposed to be conscious. So this is a subversion of the entire system. It is hurting the entire time body. I'm drinking water. Hurting the entire time body for them to be doing this. And the time body is enormous. It's even bigger than, the sun and the stars. Like the time body is enormous. It's almost on such a grand scale that we can't imagine it because, we're little and we live 100 years at most if we can. And we got to run on the hamster wheel and get the groceries from the grocery store. It is an amazing, giant metabolism that involves our own birth, metabolism, and death, or ascension or transformation or metamorphosis, our own journey. Just like I got little red blood cells that live inside of me. And they wake up in the morning and they're like, got to get oxygen from the heart, got to get oxygen. Here, let me put down my little thing. They're like running around my body, got to get oxygen from the heart, oxygen from the heart. And they get it. And they're like, now we got to get to the organs, got to get to the organs, got to get to the organs. And then they're like, now we got to dump our oxygen, dump our oxygen, dump our oxygen. And then they're like, now we got to get back to the heart, back to the heart, back to the heart. That's like me in the morning. I'm like, I wake up, I'm like, I got to eat my breakfast. I got to eat my breakfast. I got to take Cheeky for a walk. We got to go for a walk. We walk around, I got to do my artwork. And it's like, oh, now I got to brush my teeth and go to sleep. Oh, we have our daily cycle and we have our life cycle. Being born and becoming adults and then living and then, having our own personal agenda, all of that is part of the larger time metabolism. And if we are not flowing through time in the right way, that is healthy for the entire time body suffers. You can have a small bruise. You have a little bruise on your arm, you're not going to die. You have a big, giant bruise on a major organ, you could die. Or on a very vital organ, like in your brain, you could die. So this is what is happening. We have bleed through from the living area of the time field, which if I use this sculpture, instead of going back to that cross section, the living area is in here. Can you see that okay on your screen? In here, where I'm circulating my pen. In here, it's this part inside of the vortex of the time area. And here's where energy is not supposed to be. This membrane over here, this boundary. Energy is not supposed to be there. You're not supposed to have bleed through. That's like saying blood vessels have burst in the larger metabolism, and it's not what we're supposed to be experiencing. So let me get to more of these questions. I know I'm making squinty, scrolly faces. Oh, that's an interesting comment. And thank you, Dempsey, for loving my little dog boss down here. We all love her. She's beyond the mascot of our effort here. She's like an essential participant in the Flying Rainbow Lasagna experience. She's wonderful. Wait. Okay, I missed some things. Beth Major says, to me, you change when you constantly try to observe it first, then judging it as real. I want a time phone hack with FRL. I don't know, but I think that's a reference to Tyler, and that's some interesting stuff. So I'd like to hear more about what that is. All right. So wait. Back to Ronald was saying, I always notice when I'm in alignment, life seems to be going where my higher faculties dictate they should be going. There we go. Beautiful, beautiful. I then see chemtrails, grids, the very next morning, seemingly right above, the war to take over our higher faculties, more apparent than ever. You got it, man. Ronald, you're totally understanding. I'm taking a meeting with my boss over here. Those chemtrails are not only to block out the sun, they're not only so that less physical sunlight reaches us, they're so that less consciousness reaches us. and they are designed to pollute our biological bodies too, so that we can use our higher faculties less. However, I've spoken on other recordings about things that we can do in order to negate or supersede what the chemtrails are doing. There's things like cilantro and chlorella and magnets and shungite and also orgonite and, or plasterite or other things in your environment. And it doesn't mean that we should just be like, oh, life is great, I'm just looking, like a zombie at the chemtrails. No, however, it is a giant symptom. The chemtrails are a symptom of something big and giant that is happening on our planet. And it's part of that invasion. Like if you wanted to put spray paint over somebody's perception, that's what you would do. That's what they're doing pretty much. So you have to be super badass in order to maintain your higher faculties and your perception in this world. Oh my God, don't drink fluoridated water. You guys, I am so choosy about the water that I drink that I always, anybody who knows me, they know I always walk around with my water bottle. Even at restaurants, I do not drink fluoride, because that's another one of these things that is like how to make you not be able to see where you're going on the road of time. And most people don't even think about it. And they're like, what? Seeing the future? Like that's only for superhumans. No, that's for all of us. Here's a brief anecdote, okay? So I have a friend back in Woodstock, and she was at the time in her life when she was kind of like wild, and she was hitchhiking everywhere, and she was, whatever, like young and trying to do stuff like that. And she was at a truck stop, and she was hitchhiking around. This guy's like, hey, like, I'll give you a ride, blah, blah, blah. She went into the bathroom to, use the bathroom, wash her hands. And she had this terrible sense of foreboding, kind of like I was telling you, dun, dun, like that feeling right before you hit the membrane of death. And she had a very clear vision. She saw herself dead in a dumpster. And she wouldn't go back into the restaurant. She kind of like snuck out through the back way so she didn't have to interact with that guy. She did not take that timeline. These are very, very clear versions of like when you can begin to see through time, you can avoid big, giant, horrible crises and catastrophes. Now I also share this anecdote of Nicole posted a wonderful thing on my Facebook page. If you're not on Facebook, then you guys wouldn't see it or connected to me or whatever. She was driving on a busy road where she lives, and a car, like there was a near miss accident. And before she even had time to, rationally think and respond, she did the flying rainbow lasagna internal dance, and her car moved to the right and the other car passed through her car on the left. Isn't that really wonderful? Like a magical or inexplicable way of avoiding an accident by switching timelines. This is what I'm talking about. And I don't know if my words are describing it. She was absolutely wonderful in her accurate descriptions of it. That is what we're talking about here, that we can avoid the experience of death. Death is not necessary, and death is not didactic. This is another big takeaway from this presentation here. Please like focus on this. Everyone's like, there's a nobility to suffering. Death is necessary and it's part of life. No, that is not what I believe at all. It's not what I promote at all. And I think that a lot of that is death cult stuff. And no offense to anybody who's, believing in religion in that way, but I do not believe that it is necessary to die first and then be resurrected second. I think that that's a long con that is getting more energy to go to the membrane of death. We used to not die. Back in ancient Atlantis, none of us died. It would be known as the time of the immortals. All of us made it past the membrane of death and through that tiny wormhole into the metamorphosis experience. None of us had to die. And that includes plants and animals and microbes. P.S. Microbes die in your tummy all the time. It's part of your digestive process. That is necessary. It's fermentation. Like this is necessary for us. Even it doesn't matter what your food source is, if it is plants or animals, on an ethical and energetic level, microbes are dying in your tummy all the time, just so that you can eat and have access to micronutrients. That is part of the way that this world has been distorted, that we cannot simply, at this point, eat nothing but pure sunlight and be fed with energy from our environment. P.S. Also, energy from our environment includes what is being disrupted by electromagnetic fields. The fry, yes, I said fry, like fry an egg. All of that is preventing us from there's a natural energy and vital life force that comes off of things in our environment. And the things can be crystals, they can be plants, they can be, other beautiful organisms like Cheeky. She gives me tons of love and wonderful, energy reflected back to me. So when you don't eat physical food, it doesn't mean you don't eat. You eat a different form of food in the form of light and pure consciousness. And everything about this place, the way it is set up right now, is set up in order to prevent us from being able to have that form of food, because they don't want us as kindergartners to start growing up. Once we start to grow up, then it's like, oh, the bullies on the playground, you're actually a challenge. They only like bullying kindergartners. Then it's easy to take your lunch money. It's much, much harder once you start to grow up and you start to build your muscles, maybe like, take some taekwondo, kind of like be able to fight back a little bit. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait, this isn't actually easy. This is actually hard to take your lunch money. And now, what are we going to do? That is the whole plan with this planet, with this planetary invasion. They wanted to come here and be like, hey, we are going to stop you from ever reaching these levels of transformation so that way we can keep you constantly subjugated under our thumb of consciousness. And basically what they wanted to do was prevent humanity from maturing and achieving our higher faculties, and just harvest everybody's consciousness and kind of upload everybody into some kind of virtual reality fantasy land. That might be called Christian heaven. Oh, it's a wonderful place where you can do whatever you want to do and it's so great. But it's actually a prison. Like you're giving people trinkets because our photons actually have a provenance, like where an antique comes from, or a painting, famous painting, story of where the painting came from. That guy bought it, and then that guy bought it, and then that guy bought it, and that gallery, until finally it ends up in this museum. And that provenance is what shows that it's authentic. And if you have an authentic body, your photons have a provenance. They came from there. They came from there. They came from there. They came from there. There's this whole story that built you in these levels of complexity, and your ancestors and your consciousness and where all this came from. This is the stuff that is way too complex for science to even touch with a 10-foot pole. That is what you lose when you get uploaded into just a flat digital experience, that you lose all of those subtleties. And if you can't perceive those subtleties in the first place, then you're like, oh, I'm not losing anything. Look, I'm losing my horrible, cumbersome body that eats and poops and farts and that I have to feed and all these different choreful things I have to do with it. And I'll be so free in this, wonderful virtual reality fantasy land, as opposed to thinking like, wow, these bodies are incredibly valuable, that it's incredibly wonderful and an opportunity to have them because they're connected to so much and that we have so much potential programmed in. And so wait, I'm going to answer more questions, then I'm going to tell more about the refinery of personal characteristics that death is. Beth says, so the theory we've reincarnated millions of times doesn't hold water because we would have gone back to entropy. Okay, that's why it's holographic. So here's what I feel about reincarnation. Reincarnation or incarnation is actually happening concurrently. We are experiencing these many lives all at once. So this is a diagram that shows like maybe 4 or 6 lives, and you're experiencing them all at once. And one of those lives can be, you can be an ancient Neolithic person, making a flint knife. We might be all sitting around the campfire, hundreds of thousands of years ago as part of our life experience that we're connected to at the same time that we're sitting here on a fancy computer video conference with electric lights around us. And we might also be connected to the potential of who we will become in hundreds or thousands or millions of years in an almost unimaginable state, whatever. We could imagine sitting on a starship, we're sitting cross-legged on a sun or something like that. And we're having a conversation there also about the true nature of reality, concurrent. So that is why, let me also drink water. I'm trying not to disturb my dog boss here. When people say, you get a past life reading, and the person tells you, this is who you were, this is who you were, this is who you were, I'll save y'all a bunch of money. We've all been everyone. We are all the same photon, leaving the portal that is in a star and coming out into materiality and circulating and experiencing and then returning to the star and then being emitted again. It is a non-linear experience. That means that all of these journeys are happening concurrently. That is what it means, that we are all connected on these profound levels of consciousness. And your journeys all really matter to me. So I'm not merely just, like extremely self-centered. I'm not just like saying, oh, I'm only out for number one. I only do what's good for me, like tough guy voice. No, it's more like understanding that each one of us and our journeys affect each other profoundly. So I wish for all of your health and success and vitality and continued life, because I know that you are part of me. You are, if I wish those good things for you, it's like wishing that all the cells of my body get all of the red blood cells, all the nutrients, all the oxygen that they all need in order to stay alive. I wish for life. I wish for the entire metabolism of the time field to be alive and healthy and healed. Wait. Let me just finish up on this, then I'll go to more questions. So the idea of this shape is that it is a lens, and it's a lens of possibilities and probabilities and personality characteristics. So who are you? What's the real you? What's the recipe of you? What makes you you? your certain recipe, like a set of characteristics. I'm this way, I'm this way, I'm this way. And when you add together a dash of this and a dash, like cheeky's like a dash of courage and, a dollop of joy and a few dog kisses and, lots of exercise. And then you've got the recipe known as cheeky. She's not that much of a morning person. So that's part of her recipe, that she's like, I'm not ready to wake up yet. Like, I'm a little grumpy in the morning. Okay. Like, that's the recipe of who she is. And she's different and unique from other dogs. And then we have to say, what are the real personality characteristics that are you? Because that's that central core timeline, that one that I always draw going up the center of the vortex. That's the recipe of you, of who you really are, of who you're really supposed to be. And that's also you when you play the right music, that when we are embodying those correct, truthful personality characteristics that are truthful on a cosmic scale, on a cosmic level. Like, there are some aspects of self that are not eternal because they are only in response to our environment, to what we're experiencing. If you learn if you grow up on the streets and you learn you have to be tough and you have to be violent, you have to do all these different things, that's just in response to your environment. Guess what? Cheeky's a rescue. She has a little bit of that in her. She had to be defending her territory from other dogs in the shelter and getting through that and whatever. That's not the true her. That's her in response to being under duress. And each one of us, we live in this crazy Babylonian world where we have to go through the education system, medical system, find money, figure out ways to avoid poisonous food and water. Like, it is really challenging to be here. And many people develop compensatory modes that are not their true personality characteristics. Like, Cheeky is really very sweet and very friendly and very loving, but she sometimes has to be fearful or protective. Yeah, Christine understands because of what she's been through. And I think that each one of us, like, I've been through life experiences, but I just want to be like hugging and loving everyone. And, been through life experiences. So like, whoa, like yellow caution flags. You cannot hug everyone here. And we kind of have to learn this. So these not untrue aspects of self are necessary for survival, and they're not who we really are. Let me explain what I mean by this process of a lens focusing your potential. So if I go back to that screen share, hold on a minute, and go back to that whiteboard. And we say, okay, all of these possibilities in this song of you around here, that those are all versions of you that are not spot on. They're like almost right, getting better, getting closer, but not really you. Those are like blurry visions, like a blurry, if I wear glasses, I wear contacts. If you don't wear the right lenses in front of your eyes, the world looks blurry. And as you get that prescription of your glasses and it starts to focus the light correctly, you begin to see reality with clarity. And that is my understanding of this experience. This is like a refinery of consciousness and a refinery of experience. I don't believe that death is necessary. I don't believe that suffering is necessary. And I believe that there are way better and more fun and more joyous ways to learn the music of life. However, the idea is that if you hit the membrane of death, it is for the purpose of focusing your personality so that you will then make different choices or have different beliefs or have different approaches or have a different perception that will guide you onto a different timeline. And part of this can be believing differently. So in order to believe differently, it might be necessary to be exposed to something. So all of this is not about personal judgment, whether you're good or bad. Like a person who's never been exposed to the concept of the flying rainbow lasagna might not know that they could magically, miraculously avert a catastrophic, death on the highway. They don't know about that. So they're not bad. They're ignorant. They haven't been exposed to those possibilities. And when you get exposed to those possibilities, then it's like, wait a minute, there's new options, new variables. And this is also why I had this approach of just wanting to share the idea of the lasagna as widely as I possibly can with as many people as possible, because it allows people to have that possibility, that variable. Like, you can change and do things you didn't necessarily know, and everybody being connected as the same photon. If the journey gets better for other people, the journey gets better for me. This is how interconnected we really are. So I'll get back to more questions, but the idea is the same way that a lens focuses light waves and even the creation of laser light is the organizing of light waves. Ordinarily, light waves, they're flying all over, they're bouncing all over. Some of them go this way, some of them go this way, this way, this way, this way, this way. When you have laser light, all of the waves fit together. They're all focused. They're all coherent. And that is what this experience of refinement of personality characteristics means. It means that we get focused like a lens until we are our truest aspects of self. And that, like, this dress, this is not an eternal dress. It's just the dress I'm wearing today, which is like, I also understand in certain circumstances, I have to act in a certain way in response to my environment or context. But that's not who I really am. That I'm just doing that like this in this, like I said, Babylonian world, the barbarian world, where I have to be a certain way, but that's not who I really am. So all of this is very similar to doing a term paper, like for a college or something like that, using a word processor. So since word processors were invented, the way you write a paper is first, like, you just write everything, write it all out. Doesn't matter if you make mistakes, right. And then you save your basic raw materials. And then you go back in after you've saved that file and you read for spelling mistakes. That is a misspelling. Let's fix it. That's not grammatical. Let's fix that. And you just fix the basic stuff. Then you go through and you read for content. You're like, well, wait a minute. This part doesn't make sense. Or this would make a lot more sense if I cut this out of here, cut this paragraph out of here and move it down to here. Or maybe there's not enough explanation about this over here. I should explain more there. You make changes and you save it. And then you read it again and you make more subtle changes and you save it. And you're constantly upgrading the quality of the information and the presentation in that term paper until finally you have perfected your term paper and you're ready to press save, the final save, and then hand it into your professor. And that's what we're supposed to do with our lives, handing in our final term paper of personality to, we could call it the source, singularity, the divine consciousness. We could call it God, as long as it's understood. It's not this God that is talked about in so many religions. It is like an abstract God, and it is the presence of everything. So we refine and perfect ourselves through this process, and then we are able to hand in the term paper and say, this is who I really am as a person. And that's not the end of the journey. That is just the end of one part of the journey, because once you are refined, like, you have ore and you take out all the stuff that's not what you want, you're just left with the beautiful purified metal, like, the silver or the gold or the titanium. That's who you really are. Now that you've been refined in that way, what do? Do you just sit on a shelf and just do nothing? No, you do stuff. You do stuff as your true refined personality. So my understanding of what ascension is, as opposed to death. Death is when you hit that membrane on the side and you stop moving through time. You go into entropy. P.S. If you love someone, you miss them a lot because they've died on your timeline, because timelines overlap. I had a beautiful cat before I had Cheeky. Some of the people that watched my videos, a couple of years ago, they know my cat, Ashley. She died last year. That was very sad. And what happened was she hit the membrane of death on my timeline. But on a separate, parallel timeline, she stayed alive. But I hit the membrane of death. So to me, she has died, but to her, I have died. We have parted ways. We have diverged. So instead of thinking about like, oh, I love my cat and I miss her, I'm going to think about her as still being alive in an afterlife. It's actually not a good thing. Like we spoke about, Joelle said, ghosts are supernatural residue. I actually don't want Ashley to be wandering around like some kind of a ghost. I don't want that. That's not a positive thing. A positive thing would be if that aspect of self did not become like a supernatural smear on the lens, paranormal smear. We want her to go into a state of rest. That's what entropy is. But that her consciousness is still alive on a different timeline that eventually aligns with that perfect set of personality characteristics that is eternal. And mine does too. So I wouldn't want to be a ghost. Pardon me. I wouldn't want to be a ghost, wandering around, being semi-alive. We'll get into that. I got to finish this recording, go to level 2, and not being able to really enjoy life. Wait. Okay, I'm trying to scroll. Okay, let's scroll. Oh, okay. Eric is saying something interesting about chemtrails and detox food. He says, another great chemtrails detox tool is TRS. I don't know what TRS is, but he says it's a water-soluble nano-zeolite solution that detoxes all heavy metals. Excellent. I do know that zeolite is an effective way of bringing out the heavy metals from the body. Part of it is the convoluted surface area that the heavy metals stick to it. And so zeolite, you have to get food grade because it's used for aquarium filtering. And sometimes it has chemicals on it that are not something that you should eat. But if you can get something like what Eric is talking about, that is this ingestible zeolite, that can be a very effective tool also in terms of purging out all the stuff that's not the crap that's not supposed to be in your body, so that you at least have a fighting chance and you just have your body to deal with and not all this other stuff. Okay. Okay. I'm reading and squinting. I know. Okay. Yeah, Pedro is making an interesting comment. He says, now I get it. Jesus Christ was brought back from the dead because it was the wrong way. He then ascended. So my challenge in the Christian religion, the way it is currently presented, is saying, they say, this guy had to die and then get resurrected, and now you guys are all going to die and get resurrected too, and that's how you go to Christian heaven. And to me, that sounds like bogus. That sounds not right. It's like saying in order to stay on the road, you have to drive off the road and then drive back onto the road. And I'm saying, no, 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 we don't have to hit the membranes of death at all. In order to have eternal life, what we're supposed to do is go up that central core timeline, going towards the source that emanated us, and not explore all that stuff on the periphery. So with my vision, with my physical vision, I'm looking at this screen. I'm looking at what's going on in the center of the screen. I'm not looking at the periphery. Although I'm aware, like I got an easel over there, there's a drawing table over there, there's stuff going on over there. I'm not focused on it. That is happening at the periphery. I have a good anecdote from today. I went out for a walk with Cheeky, right, before this broadcast, and we were walking on a walking path, and we walked right over a snake that was laying in the path that I thought was a crack, and there are poisonous snakes here and whatever. We just walked right over it and didn't even disturb it, and everything was fine and whatever. But that's like, oh, in an alternate reality, we were bitten and died, and we never made it to this today. We didn't experience that periphery. That was far to the edges. We went right down the middle. That's why I'm saying, imagine like the most excellent skier or surfer or one of these sports where it's like you have to align your body in just the right way and go down a narrow corridor. Don't go towards the gutters in the bowling alley, going right down the center of the alleyway. That's what we're supposed to be doing. And that is what makes us be able to have eternal life. Okay, so wonderful. Eric's got a link for being able to learn more about that zeolite stuff. So I cannot share that effectively, though, in the video, but know that it exists. Oh, it says TRS is short for Advanced Toxin and Contaminants Removal System. Okay, wonderful. Got a lot of stuff there for me to read. Yes, it is shaped like a cage, convoluted surface area, and it carries a negative charge. So this is good. I'm just doing like a quick. Okay, I'll read some more of that. Combination that allows zeolite to capture toxic heavy metals containing a high positive charge, like mercury, lead, cadmium, aluminum, barium, thorium, cadmium, uranium, and others, all the stuff that they fucking spray on us. Pardon my French. TRS will then remove them from the body. Once the toxins are trapped in the zeolite's cage, it is almost impossible for them to escape the bond. And there you go. Then they get flushed out of the body, like the zeolite and the naughty stuff that you don't want gets all flushed away. And TRS differs from other forms of chelation as the heavy metals are absorbed inside the cage, not stuck to the outside good, and are therefore inside the zeolite negative charge field. Because of this, the metals are essentially neutralized and cannot cause any other damage. That is really wonderful to know. And he says TRS is incredibly fast acting, is completely removed from the blood in 5 to 7 hours, and in turn, so are the trapped toxins. Sounds really wonderful. So this is what Eric is saying in the chat. I don't have experience with it. However, I'm happy to, like, if for whomever is watching this, if it's something that can help you. We're like athletes running a marathon. If someone can give you Gatorade and it can help you finish the race, do it. And also, if this is a spiritual battle, and if someone's like giving you ammunition, take the ammunition. Because although I truly believe that we have everything we need just in terms of our physicality, our birthday suits or whatever, we are being beset by so many aspects of harmful technology that it can be really helpful to have helpful technology. Like this is why I drink out of my shungite cup. I'm not a salesperson or whatever. I drink out of this and I put shungite in my water and I put it on my face. I put it in my toothbrush. I put it in everything I possibly can, so that I find that it helps to protect me from all these electromagnetic fields. Okay, more and more questions. Wait. Beth makes a really great comment here. She says, outside of the time field, it's all happening at once. That is exactly right. We are right now like fish that are submerged in a river. We're submerged in the river of time. And so we experience one moment, then the next, then the next, then the next. It's a linear progression. However, if we were able to jump out of the river, maybe be like a bird flying in the sky above the river, we would be able to see all of the places where the water came from and all the places where the water is flowing to. And if we were a bird that was flying around in the sky for many, many years, we could even see, oh, the river used to flow in this pattern, but then a rock got dropped over there or something happened and diverted it there, and now it flows in this pattern. And that is the perspective of the higher, fifth dimensional and higher type of being that can not only see us like fish swimming submerged in time, but can see the bigger picture, the total picture, and also can see the way that the bigger picture has changed. And it has changed many times, and it continues to change. And every time you do the Flying Rainbow Lasagna dance, you are changing and rearranging the river of time. So that happens. Salmon can be so abundant in a river, and when they're doing their upstream spawning thing, they can be so dense in their packing. They can divert rivers. They literally do it so that they can make it through some areas where it's dry. The salmon are so many that they literally kind of corral the water together so that they can get in the places where they need to go so that they can swim back to their spawning grounds. We as fish in the river, we can work together, we can work as individuals to literally redirect the flow of time. We are the giant particle accelerators. You don't need a big giant $1 billion CERN or what have you or whatever. We do it. I do it. I do it every day. I do Flying Rainbow Lasagna every day. I'm making this wonderful vortex of possibilities that is rearranging life. And I'm not the only person that can or will or is doing this. I know there are many people like the lovely person who, Nicole wrote that anecdote on the timeline today. Everybody's rearranging time. And the more that we do this, the better the music becomes. She wasn't supposed to die today. That would have been a bad note. That would have been like bad music. But instead, we got beautiful music today because she did the Flying Rainbow Lasagna instead of dying. Okay. So, and anybody who, I don't know how to share that information about TRS, but it sounds really helpful, and to check out the zeolite stuff. Question from Dempsey: can you FRL to change physical characteristics of your body? Yes, like hair color, eye color, height, etc. Yes, absolutely you can. And that's, I think, the most mundane, usage of Flying Rainbow Lasagna. Because, dude, man, if you want, like, I'm not critical of you at all, but to anyone here who's listening, if you want just like different color eyes, like you can get colored contacts. You want different hair, like you go to a salon, you change your hair. There are mundane solutions to that. But a way more fun and interesting way of using the Flying Rainbow Lasagna is to do things that would be considered impossible otherwise, like to make sure that you don't get hit by a car, or if you've got some kind of a body difficulty, some kind of a physical limitation, use it to transcend that limitation. So I use the Flying Rainbow Lasagna all the time in order to transcend neurological limitations that are the artifact or end result or byproduct of the brain damage that killed the previous occupant of this body. Hey guys, I talk all the time. You listen to me for several hours every week talking. However, the language centers of this body were disrupted. And I do math all the time when I'm doing my artwork and other things like that. The math centers were disrupted. All these things. I use Flying Rainbow Lasagna to fold time, space, and consciousness, jump up and over, transcend these levels of difficulties, even being able to walk many miles with Cheeky. I had a lot of deficits, like making my muscles work so that I couldn't walk effectively. It's been many, many years of rewiring, however, and I've done it. I've found ways to transcend those limitations. And I hold this forward to everyone else as hope. Like if anybody is dealing with something that's a chronic medical condition or something that causes pain or the inability or any of those things, or if there was like something you always wanted to do but you couldn't, like you couldn't learn the piano or you couldn't figure something out, don't never say never, because there are ways to transcend those things that were holding you back. Once you start the Flying Rainbow Lasagna, you are able to unlock all of that potential. And that part of that is understanding that that's possible, instead of accepting the definition of what medical science might say, like, this is who you are and this is what's going to happen for you and this is what you're going to experience. You could be like, no, I choose a different experience, not only transcending medical difficulties, but even transcending the aging process. And instead of becoming more decrepit as we move through time, why not become stronger? Why not become a better athlete? Why not become a better musician? Why are we taught to believe that you have to degrade over time when instead you can improve and grow stronger and accrete more light and more consciousness and more ability over time? So the answer is yes, you can, but it's kind of like saying, like, if you get magic beans, whatever, if you have a magic monkey's paw, you can make all these wishes. Would you just make a simple wish like, oh, I wish my earlobes were shaped differently? Or would you make a more profound wish where you would be like, wow, I wish I could have magical hearing and be able to, hear sounds that I've never heard before? I would do the second thing. I would way rather have magical hearing than just a way of reshaping my earlobes differently. And part of that questioning structure comes from the idea, some people think, oh, DNA just has to do with the basic building blocks of your body. It doesn't necessarily understand that DNA is about building blocks of time. So the real answer is, like, if you wanted to transcend a difficulty, like maybe you got a nerve damage when you were born, you know, or something, some process of the birth process that went awry, and you're like, I don't like having a nerve damage in your face. So what you want to do instead is flying rainbow lasagna and do the DNA dance, so that you're on a timeline that is mimicking or taking inspiration and template energy from the timelines where you were born perfectly fine, and where the doctor didn't, you know, his forceps didn't slip or didn't do whatever happened that then gave you that deficit. And this is how these miraculous or inexplicable healings can happen. It's beyond levels of even thinking, oh, I'm rearranging the cellular structure of your body. You're rearranging the time structure of your consciousness, so that you, and this is how people can transcend injuries. Aftermath of injuries is like saying, that thing happened to me. Like, oh, my knee hurts because that thing happened to me. And every time you feel pain, you remember that thing that happened to you. If you heal the pain, then you are able to essentially remove that event from your life. And this also relates to anything that might have been an assault, like a sexual assault or some violence or something like that, that those leave like a lasting imprint, a scar that might not be like a scar on your knee, but that cause consistent pain through your life. And instead of having to always like feel that pain and then remember that thing that gave you the pain, you can heal the deficit, heal the pain, and then no longer have to have referring to that event that was literally never supposed to happen. So, okay, more questions. Okay, I have to learn more about what you're referring to when you say the time phone hack, so I'm not certain about that. So I will get back to you later when you ask more. Let me end level 1 for right now, move on to level 2, because my upload time is going to be long. But I thank you for everyone who's making these wonderful comments, because I really appreciate your thoughts and the reflection back and forth. So thank you to everyone who's watching this. I'm just ending the recording for right now. I'm going to move on to level 2, which is all about, cancer and healing, and on a different level. So thank you very much.